My work pursues a phenomenological investigation into visual perception, which I explore through the materiality of painting and the elusive qualities of light's ineffability. My philosophical interests in the sublime further the tensions that drive my practice: materiality and immateriality, the known and the unknown, the finite and the limitless. Abstraction accesses the subconscious and ineffable. It's present and timeless and exponentially connecting. It's exactly what it is. My process affords being in the vastness of the moment, and the paintings come from this spaciousness. It's my hope the work affords this experience for the viewer, to be present in the moment, for the here and now, for the sublime.
Ruth, thank you for having us at your studio in downtown LA during this very exciting spring for you with your amazing show at the Weizmann Museum at Pepperdine University and your show at our gallery, Infinite Horizons. Thank you for having us and taking some time to answer some questions. Your shows are absolutely amazing. I know they've been something you've been working on for a long time, but I think that one of the things that we'd like to know more about is, if I understand correctly, you started making works on paper during COVID, right?
That's correct, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the studio and to have this conversation during this moment of our exhibition. Yes, the paintings on paper that you're exhibiting, I began that process during lockdown, during the pandemic, and changing process was inspired by the limitations of not being able to meet with anyone, especially my stretcher maker.
Oh yeah, so, right, all this, those little interactions that we relied on that now
right.
you're, and so.
When lockdown was enforced, there were a lot of anxieties during that time about moving through the moment. And even the notion of working towards a painting over several months was a time frame that I couldn't quite wrap my head around investigating. And I thought to experiment by ordering paper that is pre-sized for oils,
okay,
and eliminated the priming aspect as well. And it made for a very immediate and spontaneous process.
Versus all your paintings that are so planned out, and you know, they like take so much time to create. So this was a faster process for you to really put were you putting the paper out on like a table? Did it like change physically how you worked? And
good question, John, because I didn't quite know at first how I was even going to approach this particular size paper, but I ended up approaching it very similarly to how I make paintings, and I paint them with the canvases hung on the wall, on my painting wall.
Do you? Yeah. So
I have a designated splatter wall, and so after attempting painting on a table, which is very awkward, I hung them, adhered them to the wall, and it made for a very immediate experience.
Right.
And although I do have certain aspects of my process that are planned in advance, you know, the scale of the work, the format of the work, whether I'm working towards a series of squares or verticals, horizontals, or a combination in between. I knew the works on paper were all vertical.
Okay.
And I was seeking ascension at that time.
Yeah.
And it was quite liberating to have the finiteness of this silky surface, but that has less of a threshold for saturation of building up the surface. And that was something that I discovered on the spot.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, you know, one of the questions I want to ask you in relation to this, you know, you've been working with these beveled canvases for such a time period. And my assumption has always been because the bevel kind of takes away the material, the heaviness of the canvas, and allows for greater expansion beyond the space of the painting, you know, in terms of like how like after image and, you know, different aspects of perception kind of expand beyond. And the canvas itself with hard edges would, you know, border that. This is what I've always kind of looked at when I look at why you've done beveled canvases for a period of time. Right. But then now with the works on paper and having an edge and a deckled edge and a frame, how has that relationship changed for you?
That's an interesting question. When I designed the bevel and my stretcher maker engineered this specific support with a certain projection from the wall that I wanted, which is it's kind of a paradox, because although the material aspects of projecting the canvas further from the wall brings it between sculpture, painting, and phenomena, the dialogue is has quite a few aspects of how I approach it and how the viewer comes to the paintings. I saw that deckled edge as an opportunity for a similar. It expands.
Really? Okay.
But I did most of them have a darker edge with these soft bands of color. Right. Not all, but there is this concentration towards the center of the paper that which sort of builds the luminosity, both on paper and on the canvas supports.
Yeah, I could see that, and it's interesting that you describe it that way, because they do seem to kind of, you know, kind of push back into the center and then pull back to the edge a bit.
Right.
But do you feel like the paintings that you've been making the last few years, have they been influenced by this new work with paper? Is that changing how your painting process happens?
I always think that the different methods of working come back into play in new ways, and a certain muscularity that I bring to all the painting surfaces. There was a necessity to really bring about the saturation in several layers, whereas I work on paintings on canvases over several months. So there was an urgency almost
Really?
to how I got there.
Yeah.
And a certain sense of release. There was maybe a forgiveness of having the banding be more bold in terms of their transitions.
Really?
And
Okay.
I accepted it and luxuriated in it
So
as well.
So to some degree, the material, like the change in the paper, kind of really made you think a little differently about what color action was happening between, say, the edges of your artwork and the center of the artwork. Is that kind of what I'm taking from this a little bit?
It was the material, the materials themselves, both the limitations of the actual scale of the paper, the deckled edge, and this silken surface that could tolerate just so many layers that forced a more immediate approach. And it was during a time that anxieties were high, and I saw each layer almost as a breath.
Okay.
It was like I'm exhaling and I'm inhaling and I'm moving through time and space to get towards a new experience within myself.
Right.
And the paper, this particular body of work, helped move through that time of transition. It was very liberating. I didn't even approach that body of work with the intention of making any completed work.
Okay, a little freedom in that end.
Yes,
It's like
very free.
Experiment and
almost
try.
Experimenting, and then I started to see the potential from this more immediate approach. And I didn't even prepare in advance. How am I going to store these? How are they going to dry? And so my studio floor was just a sea of color. And then I realized I need to start figuring out how to care for these so that I can protect them. I was actually coming up with some wonderful resolved pieces.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so you didn't know where it was going to go, and you were just trying new things, and here you are 6 years later, and we're all in this amazing place, sharing the story with you about your work and this process that's happened in and the amount of amazing work you've been able to make in the last 6 years.
Yeah,
it's really great.
I wanted to say one more thing about the paperwork. I think it was the release from even intending or having intentions of making finished work that enabled me to venture to a new place with this material surface, and it helped to build the fortitude to go back to painting on canvas, because it became what I thought was going to be a few weeks of working on paper, and it evolved into several months of working towards a greater body of work. And this is one of the first times these works are being celebrated and exhibited.
Oh, that's great. Well, they're absolutely amazing. And you were saying something earlier to me, and the title of our show being Infinite Horizons, you keep referring back to this term limitless.
Yes.
And we see definitely strong expressions of it in your painting. But when did you really, do you remember like a time when you first connected with this concept or wanting to paint this concept? Was it ever an original like desire or an epiphany moment that really you said, I want to see expansion, I want to see painting become beyond limit?
Yeah.
Was it?
Great question, John. I actually have a monograph coming out with Skira, and when it came to deciding on a title, there were so many words that I have an affinity for, and I did title a body of work Limitless in 2009, 2010. And I ended up deciding to call the monograph Limitless. I felt like it encompassed so many aspects of my practice. It was really my early introduction at the High School of Music and Art in New York City to color theory that brought up the concept of limitlessness.
Really?
I didn't know the word.
Okay.
And it wasn't until decades later that the word limitless came into being a very powerful metaphor for many aspects of my pursuits. But I do remember these early introductions to viewing color, the optical perception and presence of color, and also the physical and chemical mixing of color. Two very different approaches to color. But it was that investigation that made me stop and take note and really focus the on-ramp to my current work. Although classically trained, I realized that color was content, and it just led me to my minimalist color field work. That was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
That was the beginning. And being born and raised in New York City, minimalism was ever present. It was the zeitgeist of the times, but it was really my personal orientation to ridding the object of irrelevances, of having a very focused means towards my approach that was present before I even studied minimalism.
Really? And so,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, obviously it goes all the way back to, you said your high school years.
Yeah.
Do you remember what color system it was that you first really connected with?
Actually, I don't think it was identified.
Okay, really?
It's very, I think, most closely related to Johann Itten, and still, in college, furthering my pursuits, investigating color theory. Itten remains prominent, but really Michel Eugene Chevreul's investigations, the 19th century French chemist who discovered simultaneous contrast and the interaction of color which highly influenced Joseph
Albers
Albers
and
and his Homage to the Square series, and also so many artists which were influential to me. You know?
I could see. Well, if you're naming Itten and Albers and kind of everyone that kind of extended out of the Bauhaus, you know, probably just that influence of different color theories that, you know, extended on. That's amazing because,
mind you, I don't follow any particular color theory program. I think my process is a little more lush and investigative, and it's of course I do embrace and engage complementary color systems, and I'm very interested in building the surface and seeking the luminosity.
Right.
That's really my focus.
It's really about experience and in investigating that experience, the feelings, the perception. You really kind of created your own color system.
Yeah.
And that's you know, what we see in a lot of your work. So, yeah.
I think the seeds of these investigations, and also, you know, Kandinsky's concerning the spiritual and art. There were a number of different approaches to color that came out of the Bauhaus. And I feel between, you know, Kandinsky and Itten and Albers, I evolved my own focus.
Yeah, and we can really see it in your work too. So you're in New York, you know, in this time period when minimalism was, you know, such a, you know, profound new sense of what everyone was investigating and doing. But at the same time, before you moved to LA, did you have an interaction with the light and space movement? What was that process really? Did you find that when you actually moved to California, or were you kind of already connecting with that when you were in New York as well?
I love that, John. And, you know, minimalism was ever present, and I was very interested in the work of John McLaughlin, who actually worked and was based in Southern California. Light and space as a genre, as a movement, had not come to New York. It really, those artists, Robert Irwin, and his installation at Dia Chelsea, his scrim piece, which I believe part of the title is Homage to the Square as well. These were artists, John McCracken, Craig Kaufman, Walter D. Maria.
Really? Walter, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Donald Judd, you know, Joe Baer, Agnes Martin. It was, their works were really being considered in minimalism, and they still are, but Robert Irwin was being considered and being exhibited in that context, along with James Turrell, who I would later meet and travel with to see his Rodin crater before the Lannan Foundation invested in the whole building of the project.
Oh, cool! So you got to see.
I saw with my partner, fellow painter Gary Lang. We actually did a journey to go meet with James, and we literally got in his large truck and drove up the side of the Rodin crater to hike to the top and lie in the smooth bowl to experience celestial vaulting.
Wow.
And it was quite profound. My work was being exhibited in Southern and Northern California and in LA for 10 or so years before I actually even imagined leaving New York and moving to the space and the light.
Yeah.
And it really was the luminosity and the spaciousness of Southern California, and that the impact of that was quite influential on how I approached painting and enlarging the scale of the work and a more muscular approach to these larger canvases.
And so when you moved then, and I believe you moved straight to Ojai, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And been in Ojai for a couple years, but you have your studio downtown LA as well. And your studio in Ojai and your studio in downtown LA, do they inform your work differently? Are you at this place now where you're seeing the environment in which you're around you, in which you're painting, like influence your color, your sense of space, your sense of perception? Or do you find that it is more unified?
Well, there's definitely a severe difference between the work that I created in New York, in my studio in Soho, compared to the skylit larger studios in Ojai. I think that that's a beautiful title that was selected for the exhibition, Infinite Horizons. It was the experience of this seemingly infinite horizon, this pervasive sense of space, the luminosity, the quality of light. In New York, we had a loft that, although the windows were plate glass, floor to ceiling,
right.
raw loft, it was eternally dark. Right. You're in a concrete canyon. Yeah. And I think that absolutely influenced a more conceptual and theoretical approach. The work was, at that time, considered more monochromatic, although they were never.
They never were.
But they monochrome.
They have like a sense of a more singular color system in those New York works.
Yes.
And now, when you move to California, now you have these multi-color systems within one canvas, and a very different sense of, like we said, expansion or being beyond limit. And I think that kind of came when you made the shift to California, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And another shift is I had focused the majority of my work in the square format, a wonderful neutral container. I think that Kazimir Malevich has sort of codified the square for suprematism.
Okay. Yeah.
And I discovered that painting at a very young age at MoMA, and it continues to confound me. And it's changed over the years in terms of transitioning from a modernist icon to a minimalist dialogue. but I dropped the square when I moved out west for a period of time and was engaging the vertical and the horizontal. And I know that was definitely impacted by these seemingly infinite horizon and the potential that the spaciousness of this environment affords. And as I work in series, lining up the blank canvases along my studio walls and in this studio in downtown LA, I really love how these large windows are affording really working up these singular paintings, but they all are in dialogue with one another.
With each other.
And I approach each work as a singular finished work, but there's structures, overarching systems that will define a larger series of sister paintings. And so this larger downtown studio really was a great asset towards the current exhibition and installation at the Wiseman Museum at Pepperdine in Malibu.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having us here at your studio, for explaining more in depth about your process, the thoughts that go into your work, you know, the creation of the emotion and the experience and the perception that you're really trying to, you know, exemplify. It's really, really powerful, insightful information. So thank you so much for having us here.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, John. Although we've known each other, it's a lovely opportunity to sit down and have this dialogue together and have it featured at Louis Stern.
Yeah, absolutely.